The following account is based on a true crime. The setting, including the country and the names of the people involved, have been changed to protect privacy.
Why don't you start by telling me a little about what brought you in today? The therapist prompted me gently. I fidgeted nervously on the leather couch, picking at a loose thread on the armrest as I avoided his patient gaze. I didn't really want to be there, but my mom insisted it would help me process what happened. She'd made the appointment and everything. So here I was. Something happened, I said, and began to cry. Something I maybe could have prevented. Take your time, he said, and handed me a tissue. When I had calmed down, he told me to start at the beginning. And this is what I told him. My boyfriend Tom and I moved into a new apartment 3 months ago. It had 2 bedrooms, and we decided after we'd settled in, we'd maybe look for someone to rent the other room to help pay for our expenses. It was only a week after we moved in that one of my best friends from school, Jake, moved back from Italy after doing a year's exchange at Turin University. When he mentioned he was looking for a place to rent, it seemed perfect. Tom was a bit hesitant. He'd always been a bit put out by my friendship with Jake. I thought he just couldn't understand that girls can be friends with guys without something sexual underlying it. He denied it, insisting he just felt there was something a little off about Jake, but he did let slip one day that he thought Jake might have a thing for me. I always brushed off his concerns with a laugh, assuming he was just being silly or jealous. Jake and I had been in a close circle with my 2 other friends, Beck and Trisha, since we'd been freshmen at high school, and the idea of him having those kinds of feelings for me seemed absurd. Relax, babe. We're just friends, I assured him once. I'm pretty sure Jake is gay. He's never had a girlfriend in all the time I've known him. Even Beck thinks he just hasn't come out of the closet yet. It probably helped that we needed the money and that Jake had been out of our lives for over a year, so Tom didn't put up any barriers. Jake moved in the very next week, and it all seemed to be going smoothly at first. Jake was pretty quiet when Tom was around and kept to himself unless it was just him and I alone at home. If we were all at home, he spent most of his time in his room, which gave Tom and I the space we needed. One day, Tom arrived home earlier than expected, and Jake and I were laughing at an old movie and eating popcorn. Only a few minutes later, Jake complained of a headache and said he was going to lie down. You know he deliberately avoids me, don't you? Tom said to me. I told him not to be paranoid and that Jake was just shy. But I must admit, I had actually noticed. But I figured he was still adjusting to being back in town and living with roommates. He'd come around eventually. Aside from his distant, slightly odd behavior towards Tom, he was a good tenant at least, always on time with rent and bills, and he helped keep the apartment tidy. Things went on like this uneventfully for a few months, until one night when Tom pulled me aside after Jake had left for his Uber shift. I caught Jake snooping in our bedroom, near your dressing table. He said he was looking for a phone charger. That's not really snooping, Tom, I said. Well, has he ever asked to borrow your charger before? No, but what does that prove? I replied. I checked his room when he got in the shower not long after, and his charger was plugged into the wall behind his desk where it always is. So, you snooped in his room to prove he was snooping in ours? I asked. He got annoyed at me then and said, There is something off with that guy. I'm telling you. Over the next few days, it became clear that there was an issue between Tom and Jake. Nothing overt like arguments or anything, but they both became less inclined to be in the same room together, and when they were, they pretty much ignored each other. After a week, it got to the point where I decided on a Thursday night that I was going to sit them both down the next night and try to work out exactly how we were going to fix the problem. I got home from classes at 2:15. Tom was already home, which was strange because he usually did a shift at Denny's after classes. Even more unusual was the look on his face. He looked drawn and worried. What is it? I asked, worried someone in my family had been in an accident. Babe, I need to show you something, he said, his tone sending a chill down my spine as he pulled out his phone. He began playing a video. It was black and white, and a bit fuzzy, but after a few seconds, I recognized it was our bedroom. The timestamp said 2:09 a.m. It was easy to make out the bed and the 2 shapes under the covers. I was on my back, with my face tilted towards the wall below the camera. Tom was on his side, facing the other way. "What the hell is this, Tom?" I snapped. "Why would you— Kelly, please, just watch it." As the timestamp ticked over to 2:10, there was movement in the corner of the camera. I focused, and with growing disbelief, I watched as a figure in a hoodie approached the bed and stood over me. My blood turned to ice in my veins. It was Jake, no doubt about that. But worse, he just stood there looking down at me, completely motionless. Tom reached down and skipped forward until the timestamp read 3:50. "He was there the whole time, Kelly," he said, "just staring down at you for nearly 2 hours." I found myself unable to tear my gaze from the screen. As Jake pivoted away from the bed, making his way toward the door, his eyes, strangely distorted and glowing white in the night vision footage, seemed to catch the camera's lens. Everything around me seemed to tilt and blur as shock crashed over me. My mind reeled, trying to process what I just witnessed. Jake, one of my best friends, had snuck into my room and watched me sleep for over an hour. The knowledge made my skin crawl. What thoughts had run through his mind? What was he doing as he gazed down at me sleeping? "Oh my God," I said in a shaky voice. "You were right. How could he? Is this the only time? There's no way to know. I only set up the cam yesterday." I shuddered and pushed the phone away. "What should we do?" "Well, we're going to ask him to leave, of course." Tom grabbed me in a tight hug as I fought back tears, my whole body trembling violently. I felt so violated, so utterly betrayed. "Shh, it's okay. We'll get him out of here. He's never coming near you again," Tom said. Just then, we heard the front door open and close. Jake was back from his shift. Suddenly, rage and disgust burned through me, temporarily eclipsing my shock. How dare he? In an instant, I was on my feet, storming to the living room to confront him, Tom hot on my heels. "Jake, what the hell is wrong with you?" I yelled at him. "I saw you." "You freak. You snuck into our room and watched me sleep?" Jake froze, his face draining of all color as he stared at me wide-eyed. For a moment, he just opened and closed his mouth wordlessly, looking like a cornered animal. "I'm not sure what you're talking about. Save the bullshit, Jake. We caught it on cam. How long have you been doing that? And what were you really doing in my room the other day?" He sat down on the sofa and put his head in his hands then. "I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me," he finally stammered. "I don't know what to tell you." "You're sorry? You betrayed me and violated my privacy, not to mention my trust in our friendship. What the hell were you doing all that time? Were you masturbating?" I spat, shaking with fury. "No," he shouted. "Of course not, Kelly. I was just watching you sleep." "Oh God, Jake, that's even creepier. Pack up your stuff. I want you out of my house." "But—" Tom stepped in front of me protectively, fixing Jake with a glare. "You heard her? Get your shit and get out before I throw you out." Jake's expression shifted momentarily into something very unsettling, and he rose to his feet. For a fleeting moment, I thought he might lunge at Tom, but his expression quickly shifted back to one of contrition and apology. He walked into his room without looking back, and I crumpled against Tom. Jake returned moments later with a hastily packed duffel bag, his eyes downcast in shame, and handed Tom his key as he walked to the front door. He opened it and went through but turned to look at me before closing it. "You can do so much better than Tom," he said defiantly. Definitely not the apology I expected. "Get out. I never want to see you again." 3 weeks after we kicked Jake out, I got a call from Trisha. She was hysterical, barely able to get the words out between sobs. It took a few moments for me to understand what she was saying. It was Beck. Beck had been stabbed to death in her apartment in Boston, and the police had arrested Jake for the murder. Apparently, after we kicked him out, he went straight to Boston and asked Beck if he could stay with her for a while. She had no idea what had happened between us. How could she have known the danger? If only I had warned her, maybe she'd still be alive. After we heard the news, Tom and I pulled up the video footage again, this time desperate for anything we might have missed. We watched the whole 2 hours, and that's when we saw it. About an hour and 20 minutes in, as Jake was standing over me, just staring, we noticed him raise his right hand and reach across to his left before dropping them both by his sides again. Now, in his right hand, we saw very plainly a long, silvery object. It was a knife. He put the knife away again 30 minutes later, but Tom and I realized right away how close we'd come to being killed that night. We passed the footage on to the police, and it's now a crucial part of their case, and we're both scheduled to give testimony when the trial begins in 2 weeks.
The defense attorneys representing the individual referred to as Jake in this account entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. Despite their arguments, the DA successfully prosecuted the case, and the jury rejected the plea. Jake was found guilty of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life imprisonment with a non-parole period of 15 years. If you're enjoying the audio stories on Shadow Bites, please like, subscribe, and share. It's the best way to help out the channel so we can bring you more content like this.